It looks like it's still processing. Is anybody else seeing that too?
It started recording.
Oh, it's recording. Okay, perfect. I guess maybe I'm not recognizing the icons. So, all right, thank you all. Just again, as I said, thank you all for joining. Thank you all for participating. Looking forward to the collaboration. We're going to start recording the meeting. Have started recording the meeting, and again, please be mindful that this will be shared publicly. We will find a place to make this available, so please continue to look forward to that. I may even just link it to the meeting minutes and find a place to store it. So we'll see how it goes. Before I continue further, Shubik, did you have anything else that you wanted to share, or any item or comment you'd like to start off with for this call?
No, I think I'm good. You could go ahead, and I'll chip in wherever I think I need to. But otherwise, this is good. Go ahead.
Okay, perfect. All right. So first off, we've invited folks who we know have been participating with working and contributing to this project, and those who have worked on and contributed towards the actual GitHub repo itself with PRs. So if there are other folks that you think that you should be included in this invite, please let me know. I can certainly add them to this invitation. So we're more than willing and open to inviting anyone to join and participate. Right? And we want to kind of increase that participation as much as possible. So, and if any questions and concerns, please feel free to bring up in this call, or in our discussions separately. Okay. So for today, we had an agenda. I hope everybody can see the doc. We were having some troubles with getting it shared, but hopefully that has been done. If you have any trouble accessing it, please let me know, and I can definitely grant you access. And this will be the same for others who are participating. We'll need to grant them access to be able to see the doc itself. Hopefully, are you able to see my screen? Okay, perfect. Thank you. So we've outlined a brief agenda for today. I just wanted to kind of go through a few items for this team. Before we started, I wanted to start with introductions, right? I'm not sure if everybody knows everyone else. So I wanted to take an opportunity to just for everybody to quickly speak, introduce themselves. If you can share, perhaps which company that you work for, and what you're looking for from service binding operator. And that would be a great way to share with the team. So I can start off first. My name is Jasper Choi. I'm the engineering manager for the service binding operator team at Red Hat. We'll be leading the team and working with the group and helping to organize these discussions, and hopefully looking forward to continue to drive collaboration across the group. Right. So Shubik, did you want to go next?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Jasper. I'm Shubik Bose. I'm the engineering architect in the group which has service binding operator. What I'm looking for this group is that I know there are folks who use service binding operator. You don't necessarily need to contribute code back, but the fact that sometimes you open issues and you say, hey, this is how I was trying this out and it didn't work, or it worked, that is extremely important information, and I think that's a huge contribution as well. So the takeaway I'm looking for from this group is to see that if we can make common decisions on some of the things that we are doing, and also we can ensure that our popular consumers are aware when we make changes, when we make breaking API changes, for example, so that we can plan them in a way that it doesn't hurt anybody's projects, etc. And at the same time, while doing so, we are aware that there is special feedback that each of you may have while using service binding operator, and we shouldn't lose it. And when I say we, I mean as a team, as a group, we should be able to see what you're working on so that we could effectively make things better as a group. So that's what I'm looking for from this meeting.
Perfect.
Back to you, Jasper.
Yeah. Arthur, would you like to go next?
Hey, turning on my camera here. I'm gonna pause my breakfast for a second. So hey everyone, Arthur Demaglis here. I'm from IBM. I'm a senior technical staff member here. I have kind of two roles that I'm I'm doing right now. One which takes most of my time is with the Watson AI Ops in the IBM automation space, but also have the role of leading the Liberty containers and operators. And that's kind of where I got started with interaction with the service binding operator. So very much want to continue, interacting with this group, and in particular, moving forward the discussions with the service binding specification and the kind of union of the two. And across both worlds, I see the need for service binding. So I'm going to continue to push service binding specification and using service binding operator as that implementation across my teams at IBM. So I have a lot of interest in seeing the project succeed and continue to grow.
Perfect. Thank you. Bobo, would you like to go next?
I'm Bobo. Yes, I'm from the IBM Code Engine team, and we have a project service binding in our Code Engine platform, and we have released in our production environment. So this last year, we have worked with the service binding guys, and we have fixed many issues and released many features. Hope we can continue to work. Yeah, thank you.
Great, thank you. Duncan, would you mind going next?
Yeah, I'll turn on my camera. Hi, I'm Duncan, based out of the Netherlands with Red Hat, product manager in the application services BU. And what we're trying to, we are trying to maintain the good relationship that we have with you guys, because the service binding operator is a core feature in the story that we have between our managed services, our application services, and the app dev on OpenShift and OpenShift dedicated.
Great, thank you. John, would you like to go next?
Hey guys, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Great product. Yeah, so I'm part of the Red Hat Fuse engineering team, and we're looking into leveraging the specification, basically to make integrators may create integrations easier, so like connect to service, a database or something, without the user having to specify all that info, the host and whatnot. So yeah, that's about it.
Great, thank you. Thanks for joining.
Oh, and I tried the other implementations, and this one was by far the easiest one. So good job.
Excellent. Okay, Simon, would you like to go next?
Sure. Hold on, let me turn on my video. So my name's Simon. I'm same as Arthur. I'm an STSM responsible for an IBM cloud service called Code Engine. So Bobo and Chuang, they both work in my team. We are using the service binding operator in particular to bind to services on the IBM cloud, and I think that's a little bit of a like coming from a Kubernetes viewpoint, probably a little bit of a different use case, because we don't expect our services to actually run locally or being installed by an operator or anything like that. It could basically be any, I don't know, URL endpoint and a set of credentials that we're connecting to. And we also, as part of the Code Engine implementation, we actually use it in conjunction with another operator coming from the IBM cloud, who's basically doing the, as a like the service binding operator becomes a counterpart to something which is called the IBM cloud operator, which is a superset of the IBM cloud services in particular. So we use these two operators together in order to give our users a delightful service binding experience, in particularly when binding to services on the IBM cloud, and not necessarily running locally as part of a as an operator that you install in your namespace or something like that.
Great, thank you, Simon. Wojciech, would you like to go next?
Yeah. I work for Red Hat. I'm a software engineer working as a user of service binding. So I've written a number of operators exposing the service binding information. And I'm looking also to collaborate with the core team on changes.
Great, thank you for joining. Would you like to go next?
Oh, sure. So let me open my camera. So this is Zhuang Yu, and also from China. I work with Simon and Bobo, also in IBM and in code for the product code engine. So my job will be, code engine architect, and the service binding is part of my scope. So, and as Simon said, we're using code engine. Using the service binding operator to provide, easy user experience to the developer, to let them easy binding the service to the application. So we already work with Bobo, and also we have the Liu Ying and other guidelines working in last year. We contribute, new feature and also the bug fix to improve the reliability, some of the PR. So we did some contribution to the service binding operator. And in this year, I definitely will want to continue this work. And this year, code engine will be GA. So we will continue feedback to what we found, and found the issue or any of the enhancement requests, we will contribute back. So thank you.
Great, thank you. So just going to run a few more quickly. Akash, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. So hi everyone, I'm Akash Shinde. So I'm a senior software engineer in OpenShift App Services team in Red Hat. So I'm basically in the development team of Open Service Binding Operator. And as outcome of these meetings, I want to see more and more projects using Service Binding Operator. Yeah.
Great, thank you. Avni, would you like to go next?
Yeah, sure. So hi all, my name is Avni and I work in Red Hat as a software engineer, primarily on Service Binding Operator. And as an outcome, I wish to see more collaboration and adoption of the project. Yeah.
Great, thank you. Baiju?
Hi, my name is Baiju. I also work in the same team with Avni, Predrag and all. I also looking forward to see this project more adoption. And I also, with respect to the spec, how we are going to collaborate. That's all from my side.
Great, thank you. Judy?
Hi, I'm Thriti. I work for Red Hat. I'm a developer working on Service Binding Operator. And I'm looking to understand how the community is using Service Binding Operator and inputs on how we can develop this Service Binding Operator better.
Great, thank you. Igor?
Hi, I'm Igor. I work with the other dudes and dudettes and Red Hat, and yeah, I work on Service Binding Operator. I want to do cool stuff with you. That's it.
Nice. Pavel?
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Pavel Matik. I'm also from the same team, and I'm working in the QE space. So my focus is to, and what I want to get from this is to see how Service Binding Operator and Service Binding itself is used, so we can make sure that the experience is smoothless.
Great, thank you. Frederick?
Hi, my name is Frederick. Red Hat OpenShift Application Services Tech Lead, working with the people in this call, and looking forward to meet the other people using the Service Binding Operator. And my goal will be to make that we together make a product or like a project which is useful and solves the real world problems for us and for the others.
Great, thank you. Thank you all. It's welcome and thank you for joining. So we've kind of gone over some of the review, the goals, and the purpose of the collaboration. So I'm just gonna move on from there. We're gonna ask Predrag. We're going to start to go over a little bit about the roadmap, or at least some of the items that we've been looking at for on a roadmap towards GA in first quarter. So Predrag, would you mind going over some of the items that we're looking at working on?
Sure. So from our side, from Red Hat side, so we have identified a number of things we would like to, we think they're needed in order to call the project or GA. But like, this is our view. So like, I would expect that some other people in this call would also like to contribute with some items on that list. But in short, so far, what we have identified is a couple of things. There is a demand that we would like to have service binding operator running also on the plain Kubernetes cluster, which means in a cluster where the OLM is not installed at all. We're hearing that pretty frequently, and that's the work in progress at the moment, and we're gonna have something soon available. I mean, available, what I mean by that, we are going to verify that the service binding operator is running on the plain Kubernetes without any issues, and we are going to provide instructions how to install it, either through some dedicated Helm chart or through some crafted release YAML file containing all needed resources. Then other things we need to also have is something which we call customized projection naming strategy. So just briefly, so the service binding operator collects the binding information from the services and the resources we refer as the services, and they kind of get compiled and land into a binding secret, which is then used by the application either to inject those data as environmental variables or files in the application context. We're seeing more and more need. Currently, service binding operator has a pretty opinionated way how these binding secret keys are named. And we do also some transformations there, depending if this is a case environmental variable or a file. But we are seeing in the internet, in the wild, so to say, application and the services which are expecting environmental variables with some naming convention or syntax and what's not. So in short, we would like to open up a possibility that somebody like author of service binding can influence the naming strategy and tweak that so that the application do not need to be changed, so that the application gets the binding data under the names and under the locations it expects. That's one thing. Third thing is that given that the service binding operator requires pretty high permissions in order to watch for different services, watch for applications, write the secrets, and so on. It might happen right now that a malicious user could misuse that and maybe bind an application to a service he or she really doesn't have an access to. And then imagine that like binding to a database and dumping out the content database and so on. We are working on to fix that so that a service binding operator will check if a user who created the service binding has proper rights, and if not, so the binding will not happen, or like there will be kind of a message back to the user that the binding cannot be established because due to the lack of permissions. Yeah, and all in all, we need to work on the robustness and the resource consumption of service binding operator, given that, as I said, we are service binding operator needs to watch for many resources in the cluster. We need to maybe to fine tune that in order to, or to come up with an approach to process those events faster, so that there is no any memory leaks or large memory consumptions on a busy cluster. So the service binding operator should not really impact the stability of the cluster or node in any sense. And two more things to mention. At some point, we would also like to similar to the custom naming strategy, which is then kind of something where the service binding operator has an impact on, or like can have a control on. We would like to explore ability that the applications or like can also state what are the naming strategies or like what are the kind of conventions they understand and can process. So that we practically in a semi-automated way, like as an application producers or application, somebody who is actually deploying the application can specify already without even like talking to the service binding author. Hey, you know what? These are the conventions we wanna see, or like specifying more about the semantic of the data, for example, saying, you know, if you want to bind the username, then the username should go in that environmental variable or file, or if you are binding a certificate, this needs to go to a file under the given name and so on. So we don't have any proposal there, but we would like to explore that in the future. And something which is also important to think about multi-cluster support. So having a service binding running in the multiple clusters, and maybe, you know, like addressing services from like binding to a service which run in a different cluster or application. That's something we would like to explore this year. Great. So any questions so far? I mean, I hope it was kind of clear. So what we from the Red Hat think it's important to be in a part of the GA. But I'm looking forward to the input from the others in this call. So I'm pretty sure that you have also your own view on the matter.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think if we could also, in general, open up for everyone, so that if you want to come and edit this list, if you want to add something to the list, if you want to open an issue, calling that, hey, this should be part of the roadmap before we can call this usable in a more production-friendly way, please ensure you do so.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely either add it to the list and we can discuss this as a group, and also the way that we're tracking it within the GitHub repo, as we're using a milestone GA tag, right, to help us identify what items that we're working towards. And if you go to the repo itself, you'll see another milestone that we've been looking at is 0.5 is what we're looking at to be using for our next release. So just, you know, be aware that we're starting to use these tags to help us identify the work that's going on. So perfect. Thank you, Driti. So yeah, and as Predrag says, please, you know, and we know that definitely there are items requests that each of the teams that are here are wanting to contribute or wanting to be included. Please let us know what they are. Okay. Are there any comments and questions for this at this point? Okay. So one of the things that we wanted to go through as well is, you know, going forward, how do we want to continue to work together, right? The idea, at least at this point, and want to kind of throw this out there and want to get people's feedback and thoughts on this, is that we could use this meeting, we can keep this meeting going on a weekly basis, right? And if there's any topics or items that you wanted to discuss, please feel free to add it to the agenda, right? And we can go and review and discuss this. And that could include, you know, whether or not it's planning for a new feature, new request, or a new issue, you know, talking about a specific implementation and hopefully getting some demos, right, showing what you've done or what you've worked on to be able to contribute towards this particular project. Any questions related to tooling, to the processes, and so forth, right? So my hope, at least, is that we start with this meeting, and if we feel that we need to spin off other meetings depending on the amount of content, right, we can decide that as a group, if that makes sense. Okay. Any questions on that right now? Does that sound reasonable? Any feedback on this?
Just for this one thing, we used to discuss some of the technical stuff earlier in the community calls. How are we going to do that right now? Let's say if somebody from other teams want to discuss some technical.
Yeah, no, technical discussion would play part of this as well. So definitely let me add that to the list. So whether that's questions, concerns, or, you know, getting ideas, Q&As, and so forth.
Yeah, basically around PRs, questions around
Yep.
PRs, or
Yep.
yeah.
Right. So I think to add to that, I think one thing I'd like to stress is, for example, let's say John or Simon um, would want to probably walk us through a user scenario where they're using something and something is not working out. Where would such conversations fit in each of these bullet points? Would those be a specific slot we keep on the technical discussion? Or there would be a demo day we should have, and that should be for everyone, like
I mean,
irrespective of if you're coding or not, doesn't matter.
Yeah, I would say that would be part of this conversation. Like, these are just example topics. It's not necessarily the we just dedicate to only these items, right? It could basically be anything related to this. So I think, as you said, like, use cases for each of the individual technologies that are leveraging this would be a great way to see it, right? To share that with the group. So I think definitely should be included in this list.
Right. Thank you. I think that does help. So I think, do we, in that case, kind of organize ourselves into, like, since we're calling it, like, since we're mentioning planning grooming of new issues, should we come up with a cadence for it? Like, we plan and groom every 3 weeks. Whenever we are not planning and grooming, we use that slot as a technical discussion, and those should be fixed so that, for example, like, different members have different ways to contribute. So, for example, there could be very in-depth code, like, let's refactor E2E testing, and I do not expect product managers to find anything fruitful out of it, for example. So in that case, how does people, how would people choose that this is the meeting they should show up to today? Instead of, coming up to a 1-hour meeting and having very in-depth code being discussed, which is not useful from a use case perspective. So how do we organize in such situations?
Well, I think the agenda should be known at least a day before the meeting so that people can decide if they are really want to join and participate in that call.
Right, and hopefully, and yeah, I think at least my perspective on it is that I don't, unless everybody feels like that there's a need to have a specific scheduled day, like once every 3 weeks, once every 4 weeks, whatever, to do the planning and grooming, right? We could take it for now as ad hoc, right? And if somebody has any items to bring up that they want to discuss, they can add it to the agenda to discuss as a team at that time, and basically run through the meeting as we need to. Right? If we feel that there's enough items that we need a specific date dedicated to doing this or a specific time slot, then we can certainly make that happen. So we want to keep it flexible for that. Any thoughts on that, or any concerns, or what are your thoughts about that? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, to start with a mixture of topics, and then if we see that there is really enough topics to dedicate the whole slot called for just for that, then we can do that. I mean, I would at least start like this, lean, and then see how far we can go with that. Any experience from the other projects? Anybody?
Yeah, I think we can run. Yeah, run as you
yeah.
said. Yeah, I agree with that. We can run. We can have the agenda prepared, and then people can join. So if it's dedicated topic needs a dedicated time slot, so we can make it happen. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, on the converse, the reason why I'm saying that we should have some dedicated sessions on today we are going to sit down and plan for the next 3 weeks together as a group, or today we're going to sit down and have demos for everyone, is that just to ensure that different folks allocate their calendars in a way that they know when they should be attending. So I'll give you a quick example. For example, if I know that today is planning, I'm going to ensure that I don't have anything that coincides with that. But if I'm unsure if it's going to be planning or if it's going to be us talking about E2E tests, for example, because I wouldn't be joining every one of them. I mean, when I say I, just as an example, that slot gradually becomes occupied. And given that we have a diverse roles in this group, I mean, we don't probably need to decide which are the technical cabals as such. But then if just like other open source projects do, where we do have a specified slot for grooming, which means somebody goes over all the issues, says, hey, this makes sense to me, this doesn't make sense to me, this needs more information. I think we need at least a fair level of organization around that, instead of sometimes we groom, sometimes we plan, sometimes we have in-depth technical discussions, or sometimes we demo. I would rather say we should have at least an agenda where we know, hey, every 3 weeks I'm not interested as a contributor to join every week. Maybe every 3 weeks I'll join just for the demos, for example. So I think that might be helpful in ensuring that we can function as a virtual Scrum team, where we know that, hey, if this issue has not been picked up by anybody to work on, we know that in the next 3 weeks we are going to again get a chance to have a discussion on that issue in the next planning session. Else, the issue will be brought up in every meeting and it'll just get dropped here because nobody's working on it.
You, Bobo, Simon, any thoughts? Arthur, any thoughts on that? John?
No, I think I'm good.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So would you prefer, or would you prefer more like a scheduled cadence in terms of some of these planning grooming calls, or would you prefer to kind of keep it flexible and see where it goes? And we can always, change and adjust as we need to moving forward.
I mean, Shuang helped me out here. Like I personally tend, it's always good to have something maybe a little bit more scheduled, and maybe having a little bit, maybe not weekly, maybe bi-weekly or so. I think that would probably be sufficient in my view of the world. And then of course it's up to individual party or individual team to decide, whether to go to the call, or maybe also to skip such a call sometimes.
Right.
Because I don't think that, like Shubik rightly said, I don't think every topic is for every attendee here, given that we're covering such a vast range of things. So it would be good to have, personally, I think it would be good to have a cadence, at least like a bi-weekly cadence. And it would be good to have some kind of at least a rough agenda up front, such that, for example, I can decide whether it's worth dropping into this call or just doing something else and using the time elsewise.
Okay. Thank you for that feedback. Okay. So maybe one idea is that, or actually, let me get to the next item first before we get there, is one of our thoughts is that we're going to push towards a release every 3 weeks, right? So that we can have a regular cadence in terms of delivery, right? And obviously, if we've identified that there's nothing significant that's been contributed, then maybe we can skip that particular release, right? And that we can decide as a team. If we're able to go towards this kind of a model, right, then perhaps we could say, the first, the week before the demo, for example, the week before the release could be the demo day. The last week could be a planning session for the next sprint, right? And then we can kind of just use that as a rough, I guess, schedule, if you will, cadence that we can kind of work towards. And then if folks have any items that they want to discuss, then we can add it to the agenda for those particular slots, and we can have it at least marked in the agenda to be available for people to add items to. Would that make sense at least as a way to start? Thoughts, concerns?
Sorry, I didn't quite get you.
Sorry, yeah.
You were saying something.
Yeah. Sorry. So I guess so if so our thoughts is that we're going to work towards a release every 3 weeks. So at least we have a cadence, right? So maybe the meeting before the release itself, right? That could be a demo day where folks who have worked on contributing something could demo their specific piece item to the team, right? For this call, so we can dedicate a slot for that during this meeting for the demos, right? And maybe the week before that could be have a slot for planning, right, to figure the plan for the next sprint, and so that we could have like a rough I guess agenda available in each of those per weeks, so that at least there would be an area dedicated to that particular task, rather than not reviewing new items, new features, or reviewing demos. For people to add their respective items and issues towards.
Got it. I think with that goal, we can actually walk backwards from there, and we can see. So technically, if we're saying that we're going to make an upstream release, let's say every 3 weeks, so which means week 1 we should definitely be planning together. Which means week 1 is where we should definitely be at least deciding that these are the things that are going into the upcoming release, or like I said, we may even decide, hey, this is going to go to release N+1, which means not in 6 weeks instead of 3 weeks, which means week 1 automatically becomes planning. So I think that's a given then in that case, because if you want to do 3-week releases, that's good. In that case, on week 3, we should be demoing for sure. Awesome. Yeah, I think somebody wrote that already. And then week 2, definitely what that means is that it has to be a technical cabal or technical discussions on the things that folks are working on for that specific release, or it could be for a future release as well. So week 2 becomes automatically the design discussions, or it could be even code discussions. I think this is where we'll remain a bit open, I think, because on week 2 you may decide, like I said, very intense, how do I refactor my E2E tests, or for a future release you want to you have a proposal and you want to ensure that you want to be ready for the next planning. So week 2 is where we get very arbitrary, and that's totally good, I think.
And I think just to note too, right, depending on the session, depending on the sprint, right, there may not be a lot of new items for planning, and there may not be a lot of items to demo, depending on this particular sprint, right? So I would be flexible in that if we want to add any items to an individual week as a separate discussion or agenda item to talk about, we definitely could do that, right? So keep the agenda open.
And when we said demo, I think there are a couple of things that we should probably focus on. A demo may not necessarily be, let's say, a feature that you worked on, or a completely new thing altogether, but it could be an existing workflow or a new workflow that you're using with existing features in your project. So which means that, let's say John has been doing something with Fusion service binding and has tried out another application which works or doesn't work, doesn't matter. I think that's a demo, because the goal of the demo is to show what has been done and also have takeaways from there, which means feedback, and that should feed into the backlog that we would generate as part of this.
Absolutely.
Does that make sense, John?
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. It would be great to use that as an opportunity to learn more about how the project is being used. So, okay.
Right. There is one other item probably we didn't discuss, and that is grooming. And the main reason I would like to bring that up is grooming kind of helps us as a group go through a bunch of issues, and of course there will be a offline task as well, which I think, thank you Predrag and Jasper for doing before this meeting, which is going through the list of open issues and at least identifying what else needs to be done, whether it could be closed or not. I think, like, the goal of planning should be more of, hey, this is important. Who's going to work on it? Do you think this is something that will be done in release X? That's more of planning. And from a grooming perspective, that's more of somebody in the group taking a lead and say, hey, let's go through all the list of issues that we've seen over the past week or two, and either say, yes, this looks like an issue, or this needs more discussion, or hey, this is very obvious, let's just move on. So if I may suggest, if we could have a slot, let's say, in either planning or technical discussion, or I think in week 1 we should have at least a 15 or 10-minute slot for grooming in general, and that grooming is not the typical grooming where we do point estimation per se, but that is more of somebody highlighting some of the new issues that have been opened to the group and give others a chance to bring in new issues as well before we hit planning. So any thoughts? A typical example would be, let's say, you reporting an issue, you or Simon or Bobo reporting an issue, and let's say nobody responds to it, for example. And then we go into planning, we plan and we are done. But then somebody needs to triage that issue, add comments to it, have a conversation, and then move on. So we need to ensure that we have a dedicated slot every week so that people can show up and say, hey, this is my time to talk about my issues, without totally messing, or without feeling that they're messing with the agenda of the meeting. So.
Yeah, I think, like, from my perspective, I think it does make, like, I would definitely welcome folks to add items to the agenda to discuss if it's a new issue that we can review and talk through and make sure it's understood. I think that makes sense, right? Any other thoughts or any other comments or concerns or thoughts on how we could approach this? So it sounds like we're looking to basically make, whenever you have a new issue, to bring it up in any one of these meetings, potentially the first and second week if possible, but not necessarily restricted to that. And then as a group, we can kind of work through and groom the issue, ask any questions as we need to, or at least to understand it. And if there's any type of need, find out who might be interested to pick it up and continue to work on implementing it. Does that sound like what we're working towards or deciding on?
Jasper, could you please repeat? I might have missed.
Yeah, sorry. Just make sure that I understand what you're asking. Is that basically, if anybody have any new issues, features, items that they wanted to bring up, right? To be able to bring that up in any of the, or at least to bring it up in potentially in the week 1 or week 2, right? So that the team itself can discuss and review and make sure that everybody understands it. And then if there is interest, right, to see who would like to pick it up and own it for the next sprint or the future sprint, depending on what the load is, right? And kind of make a decision there. So basically to bring it up and to bring it up to the team to discuss and to decide on who would take ownership of it. And that would be done in maybe week 1 or week 2, and at least to aim for those 2 weeks for those new items to be brought up. Does that sound like what you're? Yeah.
Right. For example, John has a feedback on the channel. It's not an issue per se yet. Of course he'll create an issue, I'm sure, sometime. But then the idea is that we need to have that open floor for a time boxed period in specific meetings, so that people don't have to wait for an entire 3-week cycle for bringing something up. At the same time, I want to avoid every meeting being a total open floor, because then people will lose interest if some of the meetings, like I said, are too technical, or some of the meetings are too high level. So we need to set that expectation in advance so that people can schedule their calendars accordingly.
Okay. Okay, sounds good. Any other thoughts on this? And maybe the last comment is is there anything else that anybody would be expecting from this work that we haven't covered so far? Okay, yeah. So just maybe to close it off then, is that please, this is an open agenda and this is an open discussion as well. Go ahead, Shubik.
Sorry, yeah. I just wanted to, talk before you end the meeting. Sorry about that. Can we call out what are we gonna do in the upcoming week? Is the upcoming week planning a technical discussion, or we could start with demos as well, what everyone's working on. Any thoughts, folks?
Do you mean for next week?
Is this week 1, week 2, or week 3? So what would next week be? So we have this Thursday meeting, right, where people show up. So week 1, week 2, or week 3, which of these would we map the next Thursday to? Do you want to start with demos? That might be good, where we all level set with what everyone's working on, what the use cases are. So yeah, I was kind of wondering how you want that to work out.
Any opinions on that or any thoughts?
Yeah, demo use case would be nice to have as a start.
Yeah.
I mean, if people are okay with that.
Like, so I'll just go look. So I think John, Simon, Bobo, Arthur, Priti, do you think we could have a short demo of the use cases that you are aware of? Maybe you are a consumer directly, or you are a license to other consumer teams. Do you think we could have a demo on that? Just wondering.
I'm leaving this to Shuang, but I think we did have demos in the past, so I think we will be able to pull one up.
I think probably we can demo some of the code engine CLI, which is working with service binding operator. What do you think, Trudy?
Yeah, I think that's good, because I'd seen the demo very long back, to be honest. And then I think I did use something very long back. So it's been a while. I mean, I'm sure you might have probably demoed something in the past, but for the group to level set, that would be good.
Sure, we can do that.
I mean, it might be hidden, right? So the key here, I think that's what Shuang was trying to get at is we might not be using the operator directly because we're using it behind the scenes, covered in or wrapped in a CLI. But if that's okay, then I think we can surely do that.
Yeah, that's.
I think that's.
Or at least like explaining how do you use service binding operator? So in what kind of use case, so to say?
Sure.
Right.
We will cover how.
Could be just a slide or two. It doesn't have to be a live, but just to understand. So, how do you use service binding operator?
Yes,
I mean,
definitely.
I'll actually insist, if you could have, if possible, both a slide with some kind of background and as well as a working demo. So yeah, I mean, it's fine if it's not a demo in general, but I think like I'm specifically interested from a code engine perspective, for example, to see the whole end-to-end build and binding experience. And then I know I'm involved in both, but it'll be nice to see that. So yeah, a slide would be good because it helps people understand what are the different interacting components. And if there is any feedback from the group regarding some of the interactions, that would be great.
Sure, we can
Does
do
that work for you? Awesome.
Sure.
Yeah. Thank you. John, I'm looking at you next. you've been doing some good work. Do you think you could share it with the group in the upcoming week?
If it works, yeah.
Sure.
There's
Awesome.
still work in progress. I'm like towards the end, I think, but I should have something demoable.
Yeah, I mean, a demo which is not working is also a demo because it's a good feedback that you're trying something and it's not working out. And as a group, we need to fix it. So it's fine if it's a broken demo where, hey, I added this annotation, it doesn't work. I expected it to work. Even that's a good demo with some background on what you are using it for, so that again we understand the use case well, and we as a group can define the path forward to ensure such use cases are well taken care of. So that's going to be helpful as well. Arthur, hello. Hope your breakfast is good. With that, I'll probably interrupt you a bit. Do you think we could come up with some of the use cases that some of the teams you are working with would use service binding as?
Yeah, definitely we can do that. One of the things we've been focusing, as you know, in the last few months is really pushing the spec along. So most of the use cases would circle back to that in terms of our operators being used in multi-clouds. Some clouds that may not have service binding operator may have an equivalent. So that's why we're trying to push the standardization of the spec. So we're kind of in the mode right now where most of the use cases is, can we say that our operator support the spec and then have service binding operator as the one implementation that we kind of push forward as the preferred one. So I think one of the developers in our team, Arthur, he will be working on that item to try to make a converter. So it kind of bridges the use case that we have. That's kind of where we're going from.
Yeah, I think that sounds great. But I think in addition, I'm just kind of trying to think that could you probably walk us through a couple of scenarios, and if they are not confidential, that's only in that case where let's say you want to take DB2 and make it work with a Quarkus application or something, or a Spring Boot application or something like that. Could you walk us through a couple of such scenarios, even if there is no real code that you have to demo? That's totally fine. But like, can we have a PM demo kind of thing that this is how I want it to look, but it's not working that way? We want to get towards that.
Yeah, and most of the use cases that my teams are working with are maybe on the other side, on the side of creating the service binding and managing the application more so than the provider side. The provider side, I think, is not so hard to do because there's so many options with annotations and stuff. So yeah, we could do everything that we're doing. We're trying to do open source, so like the spec or operator. So nothing should be confidential. It will circle back to a lot of the use cases that we have been driving through the spec, which is, for example, how does an application that's managed by another operator coordinate with something like service binding operator, so that we do the application projection and you guys do the provider and gathering the secret. We can definitely walk through those use cases.
Okay.
Thank you.
Great. Okay. Thank you all.
Awesome.
Yep. Any last remaining comments?
From a Red Hat side, are we good with folks demoing things?
Yes.
You're good. Okay. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. All right. Thank you all for joining for today. I do really appreciate it again. Please let us know if there's any issues, questions, or concerns that we need to be brought up. If you have any issues accessing this doc, please let me know as well. We're trying to figure out how to best make this available, as I was sharing before. And let me know if there's any feedback in general about this program. Looking forward to our future continued collaboration and work. And have yourselves a good rest of the day. Thank you all.
Thank you, Jesper, for running this.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Have
you.
a good day.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.